Welcome to Vinnie Politan Investigates. I'm Ted Rowlands, filling in for Vinnie. The subject of our investigation is a Utah mom accused of poisoning her husband in March of 2022. It's a case about money, murder, and a Moscow mule. Her name is Kouri Richins. Here is her story. From the outside, Eric and Kouri Richins seemed to be living the perfect life. The attractive young couple had 3 boys and were doing very well financially, living just outside of Park City, Utah. They traveled, had a beautiful home, and spent a lot of time with their boys. But beneath the exterior, something else was happening. Family members say Eric suspected that his wife was trying to kill him, giving him food and drinks laced with poison. Eric was so suspicious that he changed his life insurance and will, giving everything to his sister, who he trusted to take care of the kids. Well, prosecutors say that Eric was right. He died in March of 2022, a victim of fentanyl poisoning. And after the release of Kouri Richins' children's book on grief, she was arrested and charged with her husband's murder. We take a closer look at the death of Eric Richins and the actions of his accused killer wife, Kouri. Around 3 a.m. on March 4th, 2022, Kouri Richins called 911. She was reporting that her husband, Eric, was in bed and he was cold to the touch. Here's what she told officers when they arrived on scene.
What on the early morning of Eric Richins' death did the defendant report had happened that evening?
She stated that the last time that she saw Eric alive was between 9:30 and 9:45 p.m. She stated that before going to bed, they had had a drink together to celebrate closing on a house for her business. She said that they got in bed between 9:30 and 9:45, and that shortly after getting into bed, one of the children had a nightmare, and that the defendant got out of bed and went to be with that child in their bedroom and slept in that bedroom until 3 a.m. or around 3 a.m. when she woke. She stated she returned to her own bedroom, got into bed, and felt that Eric was cold to the touch. She stated that she turned the light on, saw that he wasn't breathing and that he didn't look normal, and that she then called 911.
That was Kouri's story to officers, but prosecutors say there's more to all of this. Which brings us to the first question of our hour, and that is, what happened to Eric Richins? Let's bring in our guest for the hour, discussing it with us, attorney representing the Eric Richins family, Greg Skordas, and former homicide detective and host of the podcast, The Interview Room with Chris McDonough, Mr. Chris McDonough. Welcome to both of you. This case has gotten the attention of a lot of people, obviously. Chris, from your standpoint, from what we know now, talk to us about the strength of the case against this mother and wife, Kouri Richins.
Yeah, Ted, so, the evidence that's before the court at this particular point, obviously before it gets before a jury, in my opinion, just, doing a cursory review of this case, it looks pretty damaging for the defendant here, because you're going to have various witnesses that are going to testify in relationship to not only financial motivation, there could be some infidelity that's at play here, and of course, the narcotics where those were purchased. So I think initially taking a look at this when they present it before a jury, it could be very difficult for the defense.
Greg, from the family's perspective, is it the feeling that from the family that he knew that? I know he suspected a little bit that she maybe poisoned him with that sandwich, and he did change the life insurance. Did he articulate that to family members, and did they have a sort of a breakup? Were they going to split?
Yeah, it appears that they were, Ted, and it also appears that he notified family members. He went so far to say, if something happens to me, you should have Kouri investigated. I mean, he really did say that. He found out that she had manipulated some of his financial assets. She had created such that had he died instead of divorced her, she would make a lot more money pursuant to their the prenuptial agreement, pursuant to his buy-sell agreement with his partner. She had done some things without his knowledge with respect to his life insurance policy. And she did a lot of things immediately after his death that were inconsistent with a grieving widow and consistent with someone who was trying to collect as much money as possible. It's also clear that he was consulting at least with a family law attorney. He was uncomfortable with the way the relationship was going. There had been a prior, at least one prior, we believe there were actually two prior homicide attempts. And I think that Kouri could see the writing on the wall and realize that she had to do something.
Well, there was the sandwich. What was the other prior homicide attempt?
They'd taken a trip overseas, and he believed he got very sick during that trip and thought that he'd been poisoned. I think they were in Greece.
Detective O'Driscoll testified at the pretrial hearing that Kouri Richins' story about giving Eric CPR, that's what she said. Oh, I've been giving him CPR. Well, law enforcement didn't buy it. Take a listen.
Investigators found text messages between the defendant and her best friend that was her explanation to her friend that she conducted CPR on Eric prior to EMS arrival.
And do those text messages read, "I pumped so damn hard, so hard, screaming at him to come back to life"?
Yes.
You testified earlier, Detective, that EMS responded. Have you interviewed the first EMS responder?
Yes, I have.
What observations did that EMS responder make?
They told me that when they arrived, they began CPR compressions on Eric, and that upon beginning those compressions, Eric began to foam at the mouth. He stated that that observation indicated that CPR was not likely conducted before he arrived.
Chris McDonough, how important is things like that, little inconsistencies, as this jury, once this jury gets this trial, you have, a little lie here and there, they can really add up and can turn a jury.
And then, it's just picture a gigantic puzzle, and every one of those inconsistencies, if they, do turn out to be, false, then that's just another piece of the puzzle that comes together. And something like that, the autopsy is going to show very quickly whether or not that could have even been something in play.
Greg, they seem to really have it all. They had the family, they had money coming in. I know there was some financial difficulties, some decisions they made with, that Kouri made with her rehabbing houses, et cetera. But from the family's perspective, and I'm talking about Eric's family, during their marriage, what did they think of Kouri? Was there always a red flag, or did this hit them hard when the reality started to sink in?
I think both, Ted. I think that there were always red flags, but of course it always hits hard when it actually happens. There were some signs that she was manipulating the family's finances. There were some signs that she was struggling with her own finances. Eric had a very successful business. He had a very successful business partner, and they were doing very well in his construction business. She was starting a sort of a fledgling real estate, like you say, flipping business, was doing very poorly at it, and had gotten herself upside down with some hard money lenders. She was really getting in trouble with that. Eric wasn't aware of some of her financial problems, and she needed to find a way. At least I think that the state's theory of the case is that she needed to find a way to get out of her financial problems.
During the investigation into Eric's death, Kouri Richins made some statements to detectives that Eric was not a drug user. Changed her mind on that, but take a listen.
In several statements made by the defendant throughout the investigation, there have been at least 10 times that she has said that Eric does not use illicit substances and did not use illicit substances.
And just to be clear, other than THC.
Other than the THC gummies, correct.
On the night Eric Richins died, did investigators search the Richins home?
Yes.
Did they find any illicit drugs?
No.
Did they find any paraphernalia or packaging or other evidence of illicit drugs?
No.
Did they find fentanyl anywhere in the home?
Only that which was in Eric's body.
Greg, is the family ready for what's to come at trial, especially if there's accusations that, Eric was using drugs and doing this and doing that? Are they fully prepared to the torture that they're about to endure during this trial, having to listen to people assail his character?
Yes, and Ted, they've already had a very good preview of that from what Kouri and her family are saying about Eric. He wasn't a drug user. He was an outdoorsman. He was a coach to his kids with their soccer and baseball. He took very good care of himself. He was a healthy young man. He was vibrant, and he wouldn't have had any reason to use fentanyl or anything like that. And there was no history of it, just none whatsoever. But yes, I mean, there are always going to be those allegations made, untrue as they are. And the family fully expects that because they've already had, like I say, a very good snapshot of that.
Yeah, and we see it in every trial. It's heartbreaking for those family members looking for justice, and they have to endure the character assassinations that come with a trial, typically with a defense. We're going to get a break in. Thanks, Greg, for your time. Appreciate it. I know the family's going through a lot. Chris McDonough is going to stay with us. Coming up next, where did these drugs actually come from?
The defendant reached out to her again by text or call and said that she wanted some more fentanyl that was stronger than the previous batch.
Everybody says I went to the wrong crowd, but I think I was the wrong crowd. Nobody in this world loves you like your parents.
And he said to me, wouldn't it be cool if I killed my parents and had a party?
I couldn't get out of my head. I couldn't stop.
Which do you think you are? Sick and treatable or irredeemably mad?
Interview with a Killer. Season finale, Sunday, 8/7 Central. And don't miss the new season coming in 2025, only on Court TV.
1 or 2 pills might be accidental. 20 or 5 times the lethal dose is not accidental, Your Honor. That is someone who wants Eric dead. And the person who benefited the most from Eric being dead is the defendant.
Prosecutors say that Kouri Richins had the most to gain from Eric Richins' death, so she spiked a Moscow mule and sent him off to die in his sleep. The medical examiner's findings after Eric's autopsy seemed to confirm some of the prosecution's theory. The document reads, it was determined that in April 2022 that Eric Richins died from an overdose of fentanyl. The level of fentanyl in Eric's system was 5 times the lethal dose. The fentanyl in Eric's system was illicit fentanyl, not medical grade fentanyl. So that brings us to the next question. Where did these drugs come from? They didn't come from an hospital. They came from the streets. Let's bring in our guests. Retired DEA Special Agent Ted Gold is with us, and former homicide detective Chris McDonough still with us. Ted, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. A housewife in Utah gets her hands on fentanyl, and we have a feeling of where this came from the investigation. But how prevalent is fentanyl now in this country and accessible?
It is outrageously accessible and available almost any place in the continental United States and literally all over the world. Just to give you a little background real quick, we first encountered fentanyl back in the 90s being used, or rather from dumpster divers in North Carolina when they would dive into dumpsters and chew the fentanyl patches that had been placed on terminally ill patients to ease their pain. And these guys dived in the dumpster and they chewed it and they died in the dumpster, literally. Fentanyl is a horse tranquilizer and carfentanil is an elephant tranquilizer. It's intended to accomplish surgeries on large animals. And unfortunately, the Chinese have gotten their own recipe, and it is so prevalent now, it's almost as prevalent as cocaine is.
Yeah. And Chris, this is something, you don't think of a person like Kouri Richins with kids in the house and the business in the, Utah, getting her hands on this. I know that you're out in that area. What's your take on the fact that for her to get these drugs seemed to be pretty easy?
Yeah, and like Ted was just saying, that, first of all, this drug in of itself is not only extremely dangerous, it only takes about 2 milligrams, which is about 10 to 15 salt, grains, and you're dead. You're dead. So it takes some sophistication to understand how to handle this stuff. I mean, officers today, one of the biggest fears on the street is an accidental, fentanyl intoxication, and they OD. And so for a housewife to have access to this, they need to have some source that is familiar with handling as well as, gaining access to the drug. And then they have to kind of coach her about how to handle it, because she, or if allegedly, if she is, the perpetrator in this, she had to have some coaching from some sophistication from the street.
According to the state, Kouri Richins' housekeeper, who is being called CL in the documentation, told police that she, in fact, sold Kouri 15 to 30 pills on 2 different occasions in the months before Eric's death. Take a listen.
CL told us that approximately a week after delivering the first load of fentanyl, the defendant reached out to her again by text or call and said that she wanted some more fentanyl that was stronger than the previous batch. CL told us that the second time that she procured fentanyl for the defendant, she did not have a vehicle to drive on that date. She said that she reached out to a friend, acquaintance 3, and asked that he give her a ride to go purchase fentanyl. She said that he did pick her up, that they traveled from Heber City to the defendant's home in Francis, where, according to CL, the defendant had told her there was a check waiting under the mat at the defendant's home. She said that she checked under the mat and didn't find a check, and so she knocked on the defendant's door, and the defendant came to the door and wrote her a check from her business, from the defendant's business, for $1,300 for the purchase of the fentanyl.
Kouri shaking her head. That's not true. There's no jury there, Kouri. But the cameras were there, and I think that's a big part of all of this. A search warrant affidavit revealed some very interesting information about Kouri Richins' mother. In investigating Kouri's associates, it was discovered that in 2006, Richins' mother, Lisa Darden, was living with an adult female with whom she was having a romantic relationship. In April of that year, her romantic partner died unexpectedly. The autopsy on the female partner showed that her immediate cause of death was a drug poisoning from an overdose of OxyContin. Further investigation showed that Lisa Darden had been named as a beneficiary in her partner's estate. Short time after. Chris, there's been speculation. I know the family is not sure, but there is speculation that she might have had some help, and you talked about that. Do you think she could have pulled this off alone, or did she need some guidance from somebody?
Well, I think she had to have some type of education in relationship to the type of narcotic use, number one. Number two, I think some of the text messages, Ted, could be very damaging, where she's reaching out to this, potential lover involved in the circle at that time, and she's asking for, experience in relationship to how much drugs he has taken and what, and then of course you have the digital footprints that the police found in relationship to Google searches on, how much causes fentanyl intoxication. So I think she could have pulled it off by herself, but I also think that other people were very aware of obviously providing the drugs, and perhaps post-homicide knowing that she's probably the number one person in the box.
Ted Golden, do you think that, do you believe the state that she had a couple run-throughs here that didn't work and she needed to up the dose in this scenario?
In all likelihood. Unfortunately, when you're dealing with fentanyl, you don't know what the purity is. And it depends on what they've done, if they press it into a pill or if they're using the powdered form. You have to be very careful with handling it. It's so potent that our agents are hermetically sealing it so that it can't penetrate the packaging it's being transported in. And they've been instructed to use hazmat suits to handle it. So it is a very dangerous drug, and you have to know what you're doing, because if it comes in contact with your skin, it can be absorbed, and you'll start to trip right then. So unfortunately, it's used as a kick for cocaine, for heroin, and any other drug that you may want to ingest.
So she likely had to wear gloves. If she was crunching up this amount, she had to wear gloves before throwing it in the Moscow Mule.
Gloves and a mask, if she's smart.
Ah, wow. It's so hard to get your head around this life that she was leading as a mother and a wife and a business person, a person in this community in Utah, just outside of Park City, and then for her to go through all of this. That's the state's allegation, though, and that is exactly where they're going with this. Again, they're expecting this to go to trial next year, and it seems as though nothing is going to stop it. I'm Ted Rowlands in for Vinnie Politan. We're going to keep digging for answers as the investigation continues. Detectives always look for a suspect with the means, motive, and opportunity. And in the death of Eric Richins, prosecutors say his wife, Kouri, had all three. Here is the story.
Eric and Kouri Richins seemed to live the perfect life. The young parents lived in a nice area of Park City, Utah, with their 3 young boys. But behind closed doors, the Richins had problems in their marriage. Eric was suspicious of his wife, claiming she had tried to poison him, and he changed his life insurance beneficiary. Then, in March of 2022, Eric died after drinking a fentanyl-laced Moscow Mule. And prosecutors say Kouri Richins is responsible.
Eric Richins' sister, Amy, gave emotional testimony about her brother's death at one of Kouri Richins' pre-trial hearings. Take a listen.
Why did Eric lose his life? Why did the boys lose their father? Was it because of Kouri's greed and desire to get life insurance and other assets? If so, that is abhorrent. How could anyone value life, human life, so cheaply? I cannot comprehend it. I'm overflowing with grief and pain at the thought that Eric meant so little to her. If Eric had died because of an illness, he would have been cared for. He could have looked after him and been with him. If he had died because of an accident, people would have tried to help. There would have been kindness. But there's no comfort to be had here. There's no consoling thought in the way Eric died. In his last moments, after being intentionally poisoned, he was faced with betrayal and terror. The thought of it is unbearable. I am haunted by the horror of it. This last year has been a living hell for our family. We have watched as Kouri has paraded around portraying herself as a living widow and victim while trying to profit from the death of my brother.
Amy has her suspicions about her sister-in-law's motives, and that brings us to our next question. Why would Kouri Richins want to kill her husband? Well, let's bring in our guest. We'll talk about it. Here with us, the co-host of Surviving the Survivor, the Joel Waldman, is with us, and former special agent in charge of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Trevor Randall, also with us. Welcome to both of you. Joel, you've looked into this case. What's your take on the strength of the state's case, and why do you think Kouri Richins would want her husband dead?
In a word, affair. That is what the state is alleging, that she was having an affair. And as you just laid out so well in the first half of your show, according to prosecutors, Kouri tried to poison her husband the first time on Valentine's Day of 2022. And on that day, the state has evidence suggesting that Kouri texted a person she was having an affair with, a guy named Robert Grossman, and said something along the lines of, if he could just go away, life would be so perfect. So that may in fact be the reason she wanted him gone.
Trebor, the love, money, the very common on court TV and in true crime, and right here on Vinnie Politan Investigates. What's your take on, do you think the state has it right in terms of the motive here? Or was it a combination of not only love and her paramour waiting in the wings, a new life to start, but also money as well?
I think it was a combination. Obviously, it sounds like a made-for-TV movie, but unfortunately, we've been here before. Unfortunately, we had a case here in Georgia where a gentleman killed his child and was very involved with other individuals and wanted a different type of life. It's not uncommon. People will scratch their heads and say, well, why didn't he or she just leave? But sometimes, they look for the other way out so that they're not, as in this case, getting a divorce would not net her the type of money that she would benefit from in the case of his death.
Money's definitely a part of this, according to the state. They called a forensic accountant at a pretrial hearing. The accountant's name is Brooke Harrington, to testify about Kouri Richins' financial situation. This was during one of the hearings, and her situation was not good.
The debt payments that she made in December of 2021, there were 94 payments, and those 94 payments totaled $252,000. The large majority of those debts are hard money lenders. Some of them are credit cards.
How many life insurance policies were there on Eric's life at the time of his death?
I believe there were 6.
Besides the life insurance policy that was on Eric's business, what was the amount of money that Eric's life was insured for at the time of his death?
About $1.2 million. On New Year's Day of 2022, that in New York Life's online portal, someone had logged in and had changed the beneficiaries on that policy
to
Kouri Richins.
Do you know how much money the defendant got in insurance payouts?
$1.3 million, a little bit more than that, $1.3 million in June of 2022. In the months leading up to Eric's death, there are indicators of an increase of chaos and loss of control and larger amounts of money moving all around the accounts.
Joel Waldman, the finances seem to really be part of the equation here. I get she had this boyfriend and maybe she wanted a new life, but there seems to be some there in terms of motive to get herself out of a hole, and then also to have some money on the backside when her husband is dead and she can play the grieving widow, which she did for months.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, she wrote that book, Are You With Me? Appeared on local Salt Lake City TV to promote a children's book about grieving for a father, which is hard to imagine. 3 boys now in the good care of Richins' family. We've had Greg Skordas on, who you had on the top, and says that the boys are all doing fine. But yeah, look, I mean, there is insurance fraud. Those charges are here. And obviously, first-degree murder and attempted murder. And one of the things that happened at the most recent hearing was trying to sever those 2 counts, the attempted murder and the murder. They were saying that the first attempt at trying to kill Eric Richins would be prejudicial to the second attempt, which is just, the judge didn't buy it, said no way, but he did separate out a couple of the fraud charges, so she could be tried on those separately, and some of the drug charges were dropped by the state.
Trebor, whenever there's a dead body, the spouse is going to be questioned, and she was doing certain things that raised red flags out of the gate. It took them a while to make an arrest here. Take us into an investigation where you have someone who isn't necessarily a danger to society. It's part of the playbook, is it not, to get your ducks in a row and make sure you have everything wrapped up before making an arrest, especially if you can keep an eye on the individual and not put anyone else in harm's way.
You're absolutely right. It's a delicate dance, if you will, but we certainly want to make sure that we've crossed all of our T's, dotted all of our I's, and many times in these circumstances, the suspect doesn't really know that we have a pretty good idea of what has occurred and that they're responsible, and we will allow them to just play that game, thinking that they've literally gotten away with murder or they've outsmarted us, while we are building our case with the physical evidence, the forensic evidence, and certainly the circumstantial evidence as you had in this case.
Eric's sister, Amy, describes some of Kouri's actions after Eric's death.
Immediately after Eric was killed, Kouri told us she could not help us get anything ready for the funeral as she was too distraught with grief. We shortly found out that was not true at all. In fact, she pulled herself together enough to go close on the purchase of a $2 million home, hire a real estate agent, hire an architect to create CAD drawings of the home, hire a lawyer in order to file a lawsuit on Eric's trust, hire a locksmith to come break into and clean out my brother's safe, and attempt to have Eric cremated. She mustered up the strength and resolve to do most of this within 48 hours of his death. Kouri assaulted me. I will never forget the look in her eyes when she attacked me that Sunday morning. It was early and had been snowing most of the night. I was just getting ready to leave and heading out to the car when I saw a locksmith in Eric's detached garage starting to drill out his gun safe. I asked Kouri multiple times why we could not just call my dad for the code. I could not understand why she was breaking into and ruining Eric's safe.
Joel, her actions after his death are going to be huge at trial. Well, they're not just the book.
Yeah, I mean, you just heard the sister of Eric Richins say there, and this has been corroborated, that immediately after his death, she finds out that she's basically been written out of the will, and she slaps Eric Richins' sister in the face. That's the assault that they were referring to there. And then, you know, more recently from jail, there's a thing called the walk the dog letter, which is kind of coded language where Kouri was reaching out to both her mother and her brother, who've been standing by her side. You mentioned the backstory with the mom with a mysterious death. She was in a relationship with another woman who died, so there's that. But the walk the dog letter basically is setting up an alibi for Kouri, basically saying, look, Eric Richins was a drug addict. Just go with that story. Help me get off. But looks like she got caught.
Yeah, it is she may really, really anger a jury. You know, that this family is going to go through hell as this trial begins. Eric Richins' family, because they have to sit and listen to it. They'll have to listen to the defense basically assail his credibility. It's tough for every victim of a crime. Still to come, what does that book tell us about Kouri Richins? Stay with us.
Both by trying to profit from a book about his death and trying to get life insurance and assets that should go exactly where Eric wanted them to his boys.
This case clearly on the national forefront, brutal murder of this young woman, Laken Riley.
Investigators say she was beaten to death while going on a run.
This is a heartbreaking time for the university. We have a suspect in custody, Jose Antonio Ibarra. He did not know her at all.
Such a violent, unprovoked act. Will there be justice for Laken Riley?
the murder of Laken Riley. Live coverage begins Friday, only on Court TV.
The person who benefited the most from Eric being dead is the defendant, or the person who thought she was going to benefit the most from Eric being dead is the defendant. She thought she was going to be entitled to Eric's estate. She didn't know that there was this trust that had put the money into Kouri Richins' name. So she's the one that thought on the day that Eric died that she was the one that was going to benefit.
We're here because of a really tragic circumstance, and I don't think any of us want to forget that. I mean, especially my client. She loved her kids, she loved her husband, but she's also charged now with his murder.
Did Kouri Richins kill her husband for financial gain, or was she really a grieving widow? That will be a question for the jury to answer once she goes on trial. One thing we do know is that after her husband's death, Kouri Richins released a children's book about grief called Are You With Me? The book was dedicated to her amazing husband and wonderful father. We've also taken a page from the book to give you the idea of its content here. One page with a picture of an angel next to a boy's desk at school reads, "Yes, I am with you as you walk the halls of the new school, making new friends, meeting new teachers. I will sit at your desk next to you, teaching you, pushing you to try harder, and giving you my love when you succeed." That brings us to our last question of the hour. What does Kouri Richins writing this book tell us about Kouri Richins? Let's ask our guests. Bring them in. Still with us, Joel Waldman. And joining us now, forensic psychiatrist, Dr. Daniel Bober. Kouri Richins appears on Good Morning Utah. You had mentioned this earlier, Joel. I want to play it because it's hard to get your head around. I mean, she is accused of murdering her husband. She writes this book and then goes on local TV and is trying to sell her book and is really playing the role of grieving widow. Let's watch.
My husband passed away unexpectedly last year, so it's March 4th was a one-year anniversary for us, and he was 39. It completely took us all by shock. And we have 3 little boys, 10, 9, and 6. And, you know, my kids and I kind of wrote this book on the different emotions and grieving processes that we've experienced last year.
Dr. Daniel Bober, what kind of, let's assume that prosecutors are right and that she did this, what kind of person not only kills their spouse, but then goes on and writes a book about it and plays the role in this fashion of grieving widow?
Well, obviously, I think there's some very dark and disturbing things going on here, more than just trying to get money. Someone like this, and in full disclosure, I have not examined her personally, but in similar patients that I've seen in correctional settings, this is someone who strikes me as someone who has narcissistic traits. They have an exaggerated sense of self-importance, and it's very important for her to appear as the grieving spouse and the grieving widow, that she lacks empathy, that she may have psychopathic traits where she doesn't feel guilt or remorse or looks at people as objects that she can manipulate. I also see what we call Machiavellianism, which is a personality construct for people that are highly manipulative, willing to exploit others, even for personal benefit. There's a sort of a grandiosity and a fantasy about all this, where she's blurring the lines between what's real and what's perceived by those around her. And the question is, how does someone become this way? And very often it occurs in childhood, when they're in an emotionally neglectful environment, when they're exposed to trauma, when they don't experience the natural consequences to their actions. That very often is a path that they will take that will lead them to become the type of adult that could commit a crime like this, if in fact she is guilty.
Joel, we've seen other cases where the suspect after the murder, they're out just playing it all. They're going all in, and there's always that question: why didn't you just get divorced? Why did you have to kill her? Scott Peterson, people opine that the reason he had to kill Lacey was because he had to keep this image up of the great Scott Peterson, and this could be the motivation for Kouri Richins, in that she had this life, this status in Utah. She was successful-ish to the outside world. Everybody thought, oh, she's a great mother, a great wife, very successful, wealthy. What people didn't know is this was all crumbling down behind the scenes, and Eric now becomes a way out of her problems, so she can still walk down the street and go on local TV and say, I'm now a grieving widow, but I still have that status. Do you think there's something there?
Yeah, I mean, in a word, if she is convicted of these accusations, the word I would use is psycho, which is not a psychiatric term, although my father was a psychiatrist and my mother is a licensed therapist. Look, I wrote a book about my mom called Surviving the Survivor. She's still around. I think it's important, and the doctor could probably speak to this better, also, just to your point about trying to keep the image up. Well, people don't know, she worked at a Home Depot and spotted Eric, and it's a small town, probably knew he was wealthy and kind of lured him in that way. So she does not come from this life of privilege and wealth and suddenly is immersed in it. And I'm sure that had some sort of influence, some sort of impact. One of the things my dad hated doing was labeling people. And look, this is just a horrible decision by a demented person.
Dr. Bober, what about the answer to the question of why don't you just get divorced? If you want it out, just get a divorce. People don't. They go to this other extreme. Why?
So I think that speaks to the narcissism. You mentioned Scott Peterson. I think these are people that just feel like their needs are more important than anyone else, that the rules don't apply to them, that they're special in some way, and that they should be able to do whatever they want, and it doesn't matter who gets in their way. And if someone gets in their way, they're going to be eliminated so that they can maintain this status, this perception by those around them, and they don't take into consideration the needs or the lives of other people.
And apparently they don't have the, oh my God, what have I done feeling afterwards.
Empathy, right.
Yeah, and Joel, in this case, she was the opposite of, boy, what have I done? It's more, boy, look at me, I'm a grieving widow.
We celebrate it.
Yeah. It's a tragic case, that's for sure. Final thoughts, Joel, moving forward here, we're running out of time, so I want to thank both of you guys for coming on with us. It's a case that has a lot of people's attention. She seemingly had it all, did Kouri Richins. She had the husband, thriving business, 3 beautiful and healthy sons, great home, and one of the most desirable places to live in Utah. But if what prosecutors say she did was true, apparently it wasn't enough. Richins seems to have gone behind her now. Dead husband's back to gain access to money. He knew nothing about this. And in the end, it allegedly led to the ultimate betrayal, murder. I'm Ted Rowlands, in for Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for more answers as this investigation continues.